Eamon, how much of the original cabinet immediately after the revolution's now left?
Entirely. There's very few people, with the exception of the Minister of Defense, the Field Marshal Mohammed Tantawi, who served both under President Hosni Mubarak and is currently serving also in the capacity as the head of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. Unlikely that he was going to be replaced. But really, this cabinet is about new faces. It's about a new dynamic. And it's certainly about a new leadership that is aimed at trying to deliver the Egyptian people what they want, which is substantial change.
Eamon Mohideen in Cairo, thank you. These are the headline stories here on Al Jazeera. Fierce fighting between Libyan government forces and rebels now focused on the country's central coastal area, with reports that government fighters have pushed rebels back from Bin Jawad. There are reports too of airstrikes and attacks in Misurata and the oil town of Ras Lanuf. Outside of Ras Lanuf, rebels say they shot down one of Gaddafi's warplanes. This was the scene on Saturday, with wreckage and some bodies on the ground. Rebel forces say they used an anti-aircraft gun to down the plane and took a crew of journalists to see the site. The Libyan government's announced widespread tax cuts to mark what it calls victory over the rebels. Libyan state television's been showing shots of celebrations on the streets of Tripoli. At least 8 British citizens being held by rebel forces in Libya have been released. The Special Forces soldiers and 1 honorary consul were detained while escorting the diplomat in the eastern city of Benghazi. They were trying to talk with the opposition-formed National Council. We understand they've now been put on a British warship out of the country. Egyptian state television is reporting that Nabil El Arabi has been appointed that country's new foreign minister as part of a reshuffle in the cabinet. The former judge at the International Court of Justice was a permanent representative also to the United Nations. His appointment is the latest move to purge the cabinet of allies of former President Hosni Mubarak. Protests continuing in the island kingdom of Bahrain. Third week now. Large crowds blocked the entrance to the Prime Minister's office at Gudabia Palace. Elsewhere in the city, demonstrators, mainly from the Shia Muslim majority, are still camped out at Pearl Roundabout in the capital, Manama. The Afghan President Hamid Karzai has told the US that apologizing for civilian deaths in his country is no longer acceptable. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets in Kabul to demonstrate against US military operations. I'll be back in about half an hour after 101 East.
Has long been proud of its diverse ethnicity, cultures and spiritual beliefs. But recent attacks against minority groups like the Ahmadiyya sect and on Christian churches have many claiming that religious intolerance is on the rise here. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we ask just what does religious freedom mean in multicultural Indonesia?
Outnumbered, police stand by as a mob attacks homes in Banten, West Java, Indonesia. They belong to Ahmadiyya, a sect who say they are Muslims, but who believe their founder was the final prophet rather than Muhammad. It's a belief that's deeply offensive to the vast majority of Indonesia's 209 million Muslims. But this amateur video showing the crowd stripping 3 Ahmadiyya men naked, stoning and beating them to death has shocked the nation. It is too gruesome to show here. The number of attacks against religious minorities in Indonesia has surged in the last year. As a result, Ahmadiyya followers in Lombok are to be forcibly moved to this almost deserted island nearby. A move the provincial government say is for their own safety. For Kai Rudin, it's the first time he's seen his potential new home.
Menurut saya terutama bagus lah.
I think the island looks comfortable.
Bagus, nyaman juga udara.
The air is fresh and I don't mind living here as long as facilities such as electricity and school is provided and safety as well. I'm excited.
Misalnya Bupati, ini ada sudah di ACC, sudah disetujui oleh Bupati.
Every moment is recorded for 200 SEC members back home.
Misalnya sarana perumahan juga sama dengan warga Ahmadiyah.
The island's sole resident, whose job is to guard the palm trees, tells them on camera he's not happy with Ahmadiyya moving here. But these men have no home. In 2006, they were forced to abandon this village in Lombok when a neighbouring community forced them out. When some Ahmadiyya members tried to return late last year, their houses were looted. The movement's regional head says such incidents are rarely investigated.
Ini tidak ada.
Authorities haven't arrested any perpetrators of the attacks, and they don't actively try to solve the case. We had to report to the police station directly to get them to pursue the case. This shows authorities' lack of support and commitment to enforce the law.
Mungkinkah kau masih mengharapkanku?
22 Ahmadiyya families now live in this shelter in Lombok's capital, Mataram. Young and old crammed together in fetid makeshift tents. Kai Rudin says many here have been denied citizenship cards, which makes it hard for some children in the shelter to access Indonesia's education and health services.
To be honest, we don't like living here, but since this is a matter of defending our faith and beliefs, then we have to accept the conditions. We are forced to accept it.
The district head acknowledges his idea to move Ahmadiyya followers onto an island 60 kilometres away from Lombok is contentious, but says it's in their best interests.
Kita tidak memberikan solusi menyangkut juga hak asasi.
Perhaps the relocation solution could be seen as a violation of human rights, but for the local government it's a good solution. Why they're being isolated is because characteristically they're keen on an exclusive system of society.
Harmony is a selling point for an island trying to be a tourist mecca like neighbouring Bali. Zaini Aroni says Ahmadiyya's exclusive and elitist approach to their faith triggers suspicion amongst mainstream Muslims.
It's affecting human beings in a harmful way. I do hope the central government would give a firm policy on a national level whether Ahmadiyya is allowed in Indonesia, because the ones who are directly facing the issues are the villagers and local government. This is the problem.
The Indonesian government's Religious Affairs Ministry issued a decree in 2008 banning Ahmadiyya from publicly practicing and spreading their faith. They're reviewing the ban, but Bahrul Hayat, the Religious Affairs Ministry's Secretary-General, has serious misgivings on the Ahmadiyya's exclusivity and says restrictions on marriage trigger social problems.
They have to be more open. There are some restrictions that given by Ahmad